What's up, hippo lovers? Often do I get asked, Nilly, who are the greatest players of all time? How would you rank them and how would you compare them? Obviously, this is pretty much impossible. Just think about it, how the level developed. Number 200 nowadays would probably easily beat the number 1 in the world in like 2002. So how do you really compare that? The skill, how long were they active, and probably you have to compare their relative skill to their other players. And Siesta did something beautiful and did ask players that are around for a very long time, really established players here at the top, and everyone gave a top 20 list. And from that list, he averaged everything out, and we are going through that one in the end. I think 51 players got a vote, and we will take a look at the final result, and I will show you my list as well. Let's start with place number 20. That was SWJ Windy, a Chinese player that had his biggest accomplishment in 2003. Still some later appearances, but that was really the years where he shined and won Arabia Masters against Doubt. Big achievement for him. Not really a player that I even had on my list, to be honest. But yeah, incredibly strong on Arabia at that time, and some appearances in other tournaments as well. Bring us to number 19, someone that a lot of people of you will know because this video is made in 2021 and that player just had lots and lots of success. It is Mr. MBL. And a lot of people might now think, what, MBL, he's so good, he had so many good performances. Yeah, but also think about like how many years is he active and how many performances he have. Those are his top 10 performances. The oldest one is 2019 early years. Obviously, he is incredibly strong, but think about it, 20-year stretch. Was he ever number 1 in the world? Probably not. Was he ever considered number 2 in the world? Probably neither. Great performances in team games, and now big performances in 2020. But still, number 19 is what he got in the end. Which brings us to number 18. Mr. Tim made that one. Chinese player still active in today's games. And he is so special because he's around for so long. Look at that. Winning tournaments in 2008 and still competing late with the top players in now 2021. Playing the top team games there and probably still considered maybe in some extended list top 20 player. And yeah, you can see him performing in 2019. So annoying to play against, very well known for his massive stone walls, trying to sneak around archers, and yeah, simply the length that he is performing puts him very high there in the greatest players of all time. Also, someone that is performing for quite some years is Mr. Capot. As you can see, he has been around in 2003, competing in tournaments there, winning tournaments in 2002. I think those might have been invitational of the Elkland tournament though, so I don't really know. But as you can see, winning tournaments in 2005. And now years later, after having stops in StarCraft 2 and Warcraft 3, he is back in Age of Empires and performing well there. Incredible player, and obviously had to be put there on that list. Then we have another player that is still active. It is Mr. Tato. As you can see, lots of performances in the recent years. Never really was considered to be the best in the world. Maybe at some point people felt, okay, he might have been number 2. Had some good 1v1 performances, winning an ECL, winning Clowns Cup. But yeah, without really a strong argument for being top 2 in the world. No chance to be higher there. Although he is probably one of the guys that you might have higher in the ranking if we only looked at team game performances and there try to find the greatest players of all time. which brings us to number 15, Yori, someone that lots of you probably won't know. And I think very famous that he was just beating everyone on the ladder in 2004 and was probably considered the best Arabia 1v1 player, but simply the best wasn't his tournament. He only, quote-unquote, became second against his training partner BT4, and yeah, therefore no big 1v1 victory for him, which kind of is needed to be in the higher ranks. He's a guy who had special approaches. For example, the typical meta at that time, if you wanted to play fast castle into knights, was simply to put 3 villages on gold and later add some more. He was a guy who didn't go on to gold till basically shortly before reaching feudal age, and then sending 8 of those villagers directly onto the gold, collecting the 200 gold, and then going up to castle age. Very different approach, and made it tougher for the opponent to scout as well. He was heavily thinking about the game, and as I said, the most annoying person to play against in 1v1 Arabia days. Then we have another guy that truly stood the test of time, Mr. Dogao, making spot number 14. Was active in 2015, was coming there even before that, and was considered to be such a strong team game player that even the Chinese team SY did add him to his roster, flew him into China to play the finals as well. In the end, he didn't play a game because of communication problems, but really helped with the training, and yeah, very, very highly regarded as one of the best players of all time. Making number 14 on that list. Incredible macro player, so clean, made it to WSVG, and as you can see, lots of strong performances. Then we have another Brazilian to follow this one up. Mr. Rio will make the list, and he was considered to probably be top 3 together with the Viper and Jordan for a pretty damn long time there, making it into the second team of Tyrant, being kind of the leader of Tyrant Warlords, at least skill-wise, and won the Brain Championship. Tough performance there. Could have been even a second place in the WSVG against Mr. Yo there. And yeah, now still performing in 2020, and we might see him with some other top performances, is grinding it out now, and therefore on top of probably like in, I would say, over a span of 10 years, something like that. And maybe with the break, some holds there, 2018, 2019. Next player is Mr. Jordan, just mentioned there. And obviously active in like 2008, became one of the very best 2013, 2015, with his biggest, at least emotional win at a time where Viper and Jordan were considered to be number 1 and 2. Him winning the best of 21 in an 11-10 there in 2014. The biggest achievement of his, at least 1v1 career. Then lots of wins in WCLs where, well, oh, not WCLs, ECLs. And obviously winning War is Coming. Great performance. But also, how many years was he active? He is now back and kind of trying to get to that peak. But the years where he was considered to be the top 3, I would say like 3 years. Something in that time span, maybe 4 years, where he was on top of the game. Number 12 for him, giving us Russo as number 11. A player that was incredibly strong in team games, and as you can see, World Clan League, every single time he made it deep. Was playing with his Spanish friends. Rookie, for example, was his 2v2 team partner. They crushed everything, and then later joined Alclan to just dominate WCLs even more. Won 1v1 tournaments, and yeah, just a crazy mind, so active. And he was a guy who completely thought outside of the meta. I think very comparable to how Tedo is playing nowadays. But probably with the one big 1v1 result that Tedo was lacking. Which brings us to a player that is incredibly strong, but didn't prove himself over time yet. It is Mr. Herarea. Obviously, he will jump higher on that list if he continues with that performance that he had over the last years. We had him in the SY Nations Cup performing together with, I believe, Slam, Chris, and was it Ra? Mentalist? Mentalist, probably. So that was his early appearance. But then 2019, 2020, his years clearly... Oh, 2019, not that much. ECL, he was included there a bit. But 2020, just dominant performances. Tournament victories there in 1v1s. And lots of second places for lots and lots of dollars. And yeah, if he continues like this for another, I would say 2-3 years, easily can make a top 5 experience in the greatest players of all time. And now we're getting into single digits. Making number 9 is Mr. Cap. Korean player, the team leader of BSK for so long, winning lots of WCLs in the early days, then becoming the leader of Tyrant in the old days, together with Dowd, Halen, and Grant, leading Tyrant Legends to the victory in War is Coming as well. A crazy mind. He's a guy who would just sit down and practice a build order over and over again, like 15 times to test, do I add the 5th fishing ship now or only after adding my next dock, or try to figure out, okay, do we add the 2nd lumber camp at what time? I remember training deathmatch with him to prepare for War is Coming, and they just played 20 Goth Hunts War against us. Then we suddenly won Hunts Mongols War against them. Training ended. He watched recorded games like 3-4 times. Next day of practice, he showed up and we had to play them 3 more times, Hunts, Mongols, till he figured out how to crush us and how to improve. Probably unparalleled like ethics or like dedication to the game and how to improve and how to professionally approach this one. And he was a guy who made his team so incredibly great and really let his teammates shine. Arguably the greatest mind in Age of Empires history. Which brings us to another player that had lots and lots of great performances and finally had breakthrough and wins in 2020, getting lots and lots of dollars on his bank account there, and was considered to be number 2 for a very long time in the world. And then kind of fell off, kind of flirted a bit with Dota 2, but now had some great performances. Incredible team game player, 1v1. Maybe the best micro we have ever seen in this game, and that's not even his final form. That's not full dedication. Just think about if he finishes school there. I think Leary, if he completely dedicated himself to Age of Empires, could consider breaking number 1 spot there. But yeah, that's a big if. Let's see how dedicated he will be. Spot number 8, greatest player of all time. And that had his incredible young age and not with a lot of years on his resume. Someone who has more years is Mr. Coven, one of the best players in the very, very early years. Winning tournaments in 2001, as you can see, and early World Clan Leagues. So ugly to train against him. He was a guy always putting recorded game off, dominated the AoK times, so before we even had Hunts, for example, included as one of the civilizations. Trained a lot with the other Koreans and still performed very late, as you can see, in 2012, I think he still competed in tournaments as well. In 2000, 2018, I would say. He still broke 2.3k rating on Woobly, so long times where he performed. Incredibly strong player there, and probably one of the big names that people looked up to for a very long time. Dominated Arabia over years, I would say. Which brings us to Mr. Yo. Not as dominant, but clearly, yeah, one of the craziest guys who prepares so well at adapting to special settings. As you can see, Red Bull, Empire Wars, new settings, wins this one. Mangrove Shallow Cup, new settings, wins this one. Incredibly strong in team games as well, winning Nations Cups in so many different years. The leader there, and in 1v1, great performances. Truly over the years as well, I would say top 5 players, top 10 players over at least 6 years now. And I think with how he is playing and how he is thinking, more years to come. Which brings us to potentially the greatest RTS player to ever touch Age of Empires. It is Mr. Grant. Winning, I think, a Rise of Nation tournament for 40k as well. Winning a WCG in Age of Empires 3. And having the biggest prize pool ever won in Age of Empires 2 when it comes to 1v1 tournament. He is an incredible player. I played against him in the early days. I always felt so overwhelmed. His macro was so good, and just the pure dedication there, how to play it. As you can see, WCGs dominated years and years, made it into Tyrant, then winning with Halen, Cap, and Doubt in the late years, truly showing you that he is so active over so many long years there. Active 10 years now, and even, I think, spotted playing a bit now. A great player, the greatest player of all time. Number 5. Which brings us to number 4. And it is just splitting hairs. Who gets the spot there? It is Halen. Winning a WCG in 2002. $20,000 for him there. The meta was playing Skirmisher and Spearman, and suddenly this guy shows up playing Archer Scout and out micros everyone. Was just so more mobile, and basically invented a new strategy and a new way how we looked at that game ever since, I have to say, because Halen just changed the meta and everyone kind of played, okay, we don't have to play Pop 25 anymore. Just so good. Performances in team games as well. As you can see, 2011 still performed 10 years at the very top. Maybe with some small breaks, but crazy performances. Speaking of crazy performances, number 3 greatest player of all time is Mr. Alclan Chris. Still playing in 2020. Had some longer breaks there, but as you can see, Nations Cup 2015 performed. Couldn't make it into the early WCGs, where he was considered one of the best players in the world, simply because he was too young. He wasn't 16 years old to compete, but still dominating so many other games. Winning tournament in 2007, winning tournament in 2002. Now making it very deep in tournaments in 2020. Just incredible. Was considered to be, I would say, top 2 together with Doubt over 6-7 years, maybe even longer for some of his fanboys. Just an incredible player. Even wrote a book on Age of Empires there, and truly inspiring to me. They even pushed it to the limit. Chris against Doubt, best of 21. Both of them putting $500 of their own money. Kind of the biggest event at that time. 3rd best player of all time. Which brings us to a name that I dropped quite often, because he just is so incredible, because he has been performing over now 17 years, maybe 18 years, something like that. You can see him winning tournaments in 2005, or maybe even performing in WCLs way before that one. Didn't make the cut here because we had... I just simply cut off at one point. Smaller wins there in the early days where he was probably considered to be the best team game player, something on those lines. It is obviously not easy to say, and 2020 still performances for him, as you can see, makes it deep in Hidden Cup, makes great performances in King of the Desert. War is Coming, won by him there, or with him as well. Doubt vs Jordan, won by him in one of those times where, as I said, Jordan was considered to be top 3 players. So even there, Doubt was still around, winning a Brain Championship. And that is the crazy thing, how he was probably considered to be top 2 in the world for like 6 years, 7 years, and top 10 in the world for another 10 years. That's something we can't say about anyone else there on that list. And that's why he is so crazy. But there's one player that is even crazier. He is the GOAT, the greatest player of all time. It is the Viper. And what makes him so crazy? It is how incredibly dominant he was. And still is. He kind of appeared 2012, 2013, and then suddenly we had 5 or 6 years where he just stomped the competition. I think there were like 20 tournament wins of his against like 2 tournaments that he didn't win. People got sad that Age of Empires 2 wasn't exciting because people competed. In the end, Viper always won. He was just crushing the competition over and over again. I would say like 6 years of pure dominance, something we can't say about anyone else on that list. That's why he is the greatest player of all time. 2020, he started to shake up a bit. Some people only consider him top 4 in the world now. He still won NAC, he still won Hidden Cup, won Herara's Champions League, so he is still crazy good, but simply that he isn't winning everything anymore. Look at that, Red Bull Wololo, second place, Red Bull Wololo 2, only semi-final. People were shocked, he felt uncrowned. Still, if we look at the time, he is the greatest of it all. Which brings us to my list of the top 20, and obviously lots of repetitive names there, but I had some other person included. For example, Russo was a bit lower on my list. Then we had Yancy, someone that they didn't have that high on their list. For me, the craziest boomer and the best reactor under pressure that I've ever seen. And yeah, just aggression in his face. He then boomed away with multiple TCs in so many games and had great performances in the early years. Obviously, didn't have any performances over the last, I would say, 10. Then we have Capoch, as you can see, pretty close there. I gave MBL a bit of a higher ranking simply because he performed so well in the recent days. Someone that wasn't high on their list was Elklan Bender. One of the major guys with Capoch and Chris to really carry Elklan. And obviously Doubt in the years that he was still playing with Elklan. For me, the greatest team game player at that time probably only was that dominant for 2-3 years. Had some 1v1 performances, so clearly no top 10 contender there. Also to mention that he is probably top 3 in deathmatch players of all time, winning 3 Juno Cups there and kind of being the nemesis of Jitba there for some time. Maybe a bit of favorism because I was a big fanboy of his for so long. Then we had Ding, someone that I was really surprised that he didn't make it into the top 20. The best registered Fortress player at the time, even got an offer to join Tyrant but refused because he wanted to play with his friends or didn't really have the passion to commit full-time playing for Tyrant there. Also known as Poz Tammy, POZ, and yeah, carried his team to lots and lots of big tournament performances. Didn't really have the great players with him though, therefore didn't really have the big showings in team game tournaments, but still for me absolutely crazy. Then I had Riot pretty close there as well. Hera a bit lower simply because his active great time in 1v1s is only the last 1.5 years. Then I had Tattoo, yeah, all as you can see, all in that ballpark. Makes it, I had Tim a bit higher, simply because he's such a legend to me and was top 5 for several years there, but I can see why we put him lower as well. I had Coven a bit lower, Mr. Yo a bit lower, Cap a bit higher, simply because, yeah, probably that's a personal thing as well, because I simply practiced games with him and just realized how great his mind is. And Leary was a bit higher for me. Halen, Grant switched, and my top 3 are the same. Viper, Doubt, Chris. Grant, Halen, you can choose. So overall, pretty similar. I didn't have Dogao on my list. I'm not really sure where I put him. I probably put him around number 25. Never really was considered top 5 in the world. And therefore, then it makes it tricky for me to really put him that high. Something else that I can give you though is the other players that made it into the top 50. We had players like Alive coming in there, Back T, Nick of Max, all the players that you know. Ding in the end made it number 25. And then we had Yancy, as you can see, the players that I included there still made it into the top 35, but yeah, I valued them a bit higher. Cam winning a WCG, but not too much after that. So yeah, greatest player at one spot, but that was kind of it. And then we had Kaiser Wilhelm, early great genius, and you can see Zupi Ape, Fire, for example, all getting the same points, and that's why they share their placement. Great list, and yeah, I had a lot of fun thinking about that, making my list. Thanks again, Siesta, for doing all the work, collecting all that, and look down below. I will link the AoE Zone thread where you can see and watch some recorded games of those players. Also, if you want to learn more about the old games, I will link the playlist for my AoE2 history now. So you can look up, oh, how were the games played in 2001 and the very early years. You can see Grant a bit, Halen a bit, the old Windy against Doubt finals, for example, that we just talked about. And maybe you can give me your idea. Nelly, your list doesn't make sense. Why is this player so high? Why is this player so low? And maybe some predictions who will make it a bit higher. Give me your thoughts. That was it from me. Goodbye, Hippo lovers.